Welcome back to Switch to Linux. So we are going to talk today about how I built my book server. So as you know, I'm doing a big battle with DRM stuff. I want to get things like the Kindle and related stuff off of my devices. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to build a book server so that I could pass all of my books onto individual computers without having to have my one particular computer that runs my backups and stuffs enabled. Currently I'd have to swap out that hard drive, turn that computer on, and then push the books. Well, the thing is that I have one particular computer that happens to have a web server on it that is always on, and that is my OpenMediaVault. Now, if you're still running the OpenMediaVault, the second version, then you will still find the plugin in the OMV Extras section to enable a Calibre server. But if you upgrade to the newer release of OpenMediaVault that was released just a few months back, then the Calibre server is taken out, and the person who developed that plugin has said that he is not necessarily interested in maintaining that plugin. So I'm not going to do the plugin, but what I am going to do here is walk you through how to build such a server on your own computer, in which case OMV is based on Debian, and so basically I have a Debian web server running. And so what we're going to do is walk through some different resources. We're going to solve a few problems, run a few things a little bit differently, and I'm just going to show you what I did. This is not the only way to do this solution, obviously, but I'm just going to show you how it works. So the end result happens to be this. On any device, when you are in my network here, if you go into the location of where the media server is, and then just affix 8080 to it, that is where your Calibre is. So I pulled this up on my iPad here because it's the biggest screen I have easily available. So when you come in here, you can now see that you can actually access your library. So let's see if I can do this without actually looking at the screen through the mirror. There you go. Click on books, and now these are a list of all of the books that I have in my server. Okay, so then what you want to do is you can click on any given book. So if I want to add, now some of these are still just Amazon format, so if I pick one of those, it will give me a couple issues there. I know that this one here is an EPUB. So I have actually this EPUB is the default, and then PDF. I'm going to look at this Fox's Book of Martyrs. Just push the Get button, and you'll see here that it wants to kind of default by open in iBooks, which I don't generally use. So what I'm going to do is push the open in, and I have installed, it is Aldakio, I don't know, it's Aldiko, however you pronounce that. That's the app that I'm using. The green one there is the app that I'm using on the iPad, just because there is, iBooks is the one I use on the iPhone, but I could not get it to install on the iPad. It just won't work. And so if I just go ahead and click this guy here, so now it will add the book. It looks like I probably already started. I already added that book. So it will add the book in, and then now I can just go right in there, and I can get back and start reading my book. And so that's kind of the way that the server runs. I have a kitty wants to come and say hi. Hi, all you peoples. You should all read ebooks without DRM, because DRM sucks. Thank you, kitty. You agree with me. Yeah, DRM sucks. Yeah, does it? Oh, okay. Now the next thing that will happen is if I happen to be on any device and I'm looking around online and I happen to find a nice ebook, be it and it'll work for PDF, it'll work for an EPUB, it'll work for a Kindle format. I mean, any format of an ebook that I find, I have built the system so I can just go right into my shared folders in my NAS drive, drop it into a specific folder in there, and then every 10 minutes my server runs a cron job, and it will add anything dropped in that folder to the library, and then it will delete everything in that folder. So I have a means to add my books directly to the library simply by dropping them on to the NAS without any issue there. So I'm going to walk you through what we did. We're not actually going to do the procedure simply because it's done. And now I've been spending about a whole weekend figuring this out. So I'm going to show you finally the end result. You could probably do this in about I'd probably say in my system it would have probably taken about an hour to hook everything up, just because Calibre took like 45 minutes to do. But the troubleshooting is the problem. And if you watched my video on dependence and independence and corporate dependence the other day, you learn that we do need to learn how to solve our own problems, but we do that by utilizing the host of resources, whether that be individuals or, in my case, I just happen to do a lot of internet searches to solve my problems. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and drop back down to a smaller screen, get some things set up, and then we are going to go in and talk about what we did and how we did it. Okay, so I pulled up here some websites that were helping me out, and I went into a terminal and I used my SSH command to go right on into my OpenMediaVault. So just for clarification, we're not adding this to OpenMediaVault. What we're doing is we are building this on top of the web server that runs on the background system that OpenMediaVault runs on top of. So OpenMediaVault is a Debian system that they run the OpenMediaVault to run all the NAS stuff, and then there is a web-based control panel to manage all that. And so we're taking advantage of the fact that there's a web server built on here and just a basic operating system back here. Actually, we're not really using the web server, come to think of it. But basically, we have a Debian without a desktop environment. So that's the circumstance by which we need to run with Calibre. So I pulled up this tutorial here from DigitalOcean, which is how to create a Calibre ebook server on Ubuntu 14.04. Now, if you were running on an Ubuntu server, I'd probably follow this tutorial pretty much exactly, and it would probably work for you. But we're not on an Ubuntu server. However, this did contain the vast majority of what I needed to do. So I'm going to walk through everything here that they do, and I'm going to give you a couple extra commands. Now, for one thing is a couple of the imperative challenges I encountered. I really wanted to have the library and everything else on the NAS drive themselves, so basically on the drive, because as my NAS works with OpenMediaVault, I have a 16 gigabyte flash drive that actually runs the operating system, and then internal to the computer there are two 1 terabyte laptop hard drives in there, which are in a RAID 1 syncing each other. So if there's a failure in one drive, I should have the second drive as the backup. So I really wanted to run my book server on those files. So if something were to happen, it saves you a few steps. But no matter how I mounted that thing, no matter what I did, it would not work. What it would end up doing is it would, anytime you'd run the Calibre server, it would create a hard copy on the drive itself, on the operating system drive itself, and it would prevent the system folder from actually syncing in there. And I tried all sorts of orders. I tried putting I tried demounting it. I first was working with fstab to mount the drive first, and then I tried to just run my commands by mounting the drive right before I start the server. Nothing worked. So what I ended up having to do is I put in a folder where the actual library that Calibre uses is on the operating system itself. And I'll tell you where I put that and why. There's better places to put this for sure. But the reason I did this is simply because I was working within here. So if you look at OpenMediaVault, you'll see that there's a series of drives, and these correspond to the one drive, which is my main USB drive, and then the other two correspond to my two 1 terabyte drives. Now, what I did is I was trying to just mount things in here using fstab and other things. And so since I got so used to everything being over here, I just went ahead and created my Calibre library here. So my Calibre library is at media/Calibre. So I do this, you can see here that there's my list of books. Now you'll see down there in the second column right under my name there where my book is at is the to add folder. So the to add folder is actually mounted. So what I did do is I have an fstab script which loads my NAS folder, which essentially is designed to sort of mirror this. But what it will do is it takes anything dropped into that to add folder, mounts it to this to add folder, and then I have a cron job that runs anything that's in this to add folder every 10 minutes, adds it to the library, and then deletes everything out of that folder. So that's kind of what the status is. So that's kind of near the bottom here. But first let's start by looking at this particular article here. So keep referring back to this DigitalOcean, how to create a Calibre ebook server for the basics. And if you if you have more freedom and flexibility in what OS you're using, go with Ubuntu. That's what I would do. But I love OpenMediaVault and the things there. I just wanted to make it work. And I'll tell you, I accidentally killed the system once doing this. So we're going to do this without killing the system, which is good. But everything's working now, and I have it auto-starting. I just, if the power goes out or I need to shut the system down or whatever, turn all the system down, and as soon as I boot the system back up, it restarts my Calibre server, and it works great. All right, so here they kind of give you the introduction. I'm not going to flip through all this. I'm going to assume you know a little bit about Calibre at this point in time. Basically, it is an ebook system that will have some libraries. They have a server component, just a lot of neat things in there. So they talk about covering 4 things: installing Calibre, creating the library, making it run as a background service, and automatically adding new books to the library. All right, so first is installing Calibre. Now, in most systems, you don't have to go through all this stuff. It's just sudo apt install Calibre will do it. So if you're following along, let me go back to my main root here. So if you were following along, just look at my command lines down here. What I would do, now you can see that we are in root, so we do not need to do sudo. So if I just do apt install Calibre, then this is going to actually install Calibre. Now this on my system took me about, I'd say 20, 30, maybe 40 minutes to install Calibre. So it does take a while. So you don't have to do all the stuff that they have up there, just apt install Calibre, or if you're not on root, sudo apt install Calibre. Just get Calibre installed. So that's your first step. Now they talk about running the dependencies, and you do need to install xvfp. So in my case here, I gotta remember what screen I'm on here. In my case here, I just do an apt install xvfb. And what this is going to do is it's going to give you a virtual X server, because Calibre does require some desktop management to run, and that does not exist on this. And so XVFB is going to basically install a virtual X server. So it will allow you to run Calibre commands without actually having a desktop environment. I did find that on my system and many systems, ImageMagick is already installed. And so we don't necessarily need to install that. If you're not sure, then go ahead and install it. I mean, worst case scenario, it says, hey, this is already installed. Now, the other one that is not in this tutorial that I had to install, and I'm not sure if it's because it's Debian or because the tutorial's out of date or whatever else, but if you do not install xoff, then you are going to run into some system errors. This one took me 2 hours or 3 hours or something to figure out. And I'm going through a bunch of scripts, looking everything over and determining that, xoff. And literally it was like a crapshoot. Why is this not working? Apt install xoff. Oh, it's not installed. Bingo. Solved several hours of problems. This is adding books to the database with the cron job. So you need to install these 2 packages if you're running OMV3 like I'm doing, or probably any other basic Debian server. So xvfb and xoff, those things will need to be installed. Those will just take a moment to install. ImageMagick for me was already there. If you're unsure, go ahead and try and install it. Now, their next part here is just to create a library. What they're doing here is they wanted to create the library and then they wanted to create that to-add folder. I just went ahead and used the to-add because, you know, that's it. But I did not do this. I didn't use their specific location. I used media, like I said, because I was just working on mounting things, and it just worked out that way. You could put that anywhere, just as long as you're keeping consistency with where your library actually happens to be. Now, in my case, I already had a library, so I actually had to push the library onto the server. So if you do not know how to do that, you'd need to exit out of your system, back to your main system here, and then you just want to figure out where your books are. So in my case, they would be in my home. Is it there? No. Where am I at? I'm already where I need to be. Duh. So if I go into Calibre library, you'll see here that this is where everything is. The important file here is to look for the meta.db file. You see it on my third column on the top there. So that is the location of your files there. So what I needed to do is scp. And I'm going to do, I think it's RP. Is it RP? I think it was RP. Just recursively push all the files. And I wanted to do Calibre library. And then I want to push this over to the OMV system. And so I just do root at, and then I'm going to use my IP address. And then colon, and then the folder it was going into. All right, so hit enter here. It's going to ask you for your root password. I'm not going to do this again because that might mess up the library that I already have. But running this command, that pushes your pre-existing Calibre library over there. If you do not already have a pre-existing Calibre library, I'm just going to get logged back into my other system there. Okay. So if you do not already have a Calibre library, just go ahead and follow their instructions here. I did not test these, but I'm pretty sure these will work. Basically, they're just grabbing, the Christmas Carol, and I'm guessing that first one's Pride and Prejudice is my thought. So it's going to grab these two books here just to create a little library. Now, the next line here. Now, if you do not install xoff, this line is going to fail. It's going to give you an error, and that error I could not find anything on the internet for. It simply ends up being you need to install xoff. And so here, just running this command is going to add anything that is inside that path to your library. So what we're doing here, basically, you're starting this virtual X server. You're running the Calibre DB, and then you add. Now, actually, according though to the documentation on Calibre and how I ran my code to the documentation. You're actually supposed to list all of your options first, and so it should be Calibre DB add. Then you do your library path, and then you add your books. This might work, but I had tried this thing so many times before I got this working. It finally ended up working when I was following the Calibre documentation, go figure, and so that's really the best way to do it. But anyway, that's going to give you a library. You'll see the status output as it adds books to your library, and then you can test it out by just hitting your Calibre server and then with library. I'm not going to do that over here simply because my Calibre server is already running. I have mine starting up as you start. All right, so to get to this, just go to your server IP address. In my case, it's the 192.168. Where's it at? You saw it on here somewhere, probably. There you go. 192.168.1140 is just the internal network that I assigned to my NAS. And then colon 8080, and then that will give you your system. Now, if you already have something on 8080, of course, change the port. There is a way you can do that. You can set the port up with the Calibre server. I think it's just with -- port. I'm not sure. But then you'll be able to see that you have your books in there. Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and Pride and Prejudice. You know, I figured Pride and Prejudice, but I just did not figure that ChristmasCarol.moby would have translated into Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, but okay, why not? Here's how to remove the existing Calibre library. Like I said, I had to do it by pushing with SCP, so that's why I just follow that script that I have in there, and that'll help out. And I'm going to try and eventually put this over onto my website. It's not on there right now. That way you get the steps that I happen to do. All right, so now this step here, step 4, I'm sure this works great on Ubuntu. Does not work on Debian. And this is actually the thing, trying to get this thing to work is what caused me to kill it. I had to reinstall my entire OMV from my backup, from my previous backup. So if you happen to be running Ubuntu, try this. Didn't work for me. What I needed to do is, of course, I created the library directly on the operating system drive, which is probably just fine because I make regular backups of that as well. Now, what I needed to do actually is I said, well, I know how to start the script, and what I chose to do with Debian, they even say we could add the daemonize flag to the command and do it, you know, but there's a better way. I found the daemonize flag was just perfect. And so, I don't use Debian enough to know how do I make scripts run at startup. You know, on Linux Mint, I can tell you exactly how to do it. You do it all through the GUI, and it's awesome, and it's easy. But hey, this is Linux, so sometimes you got to figure out how to do stuff in the terminal. So I basically just followed this guy's basic tutorial here, and I wrote a little bash script that starts it out. So let's go ahead and look at that bash script. So this is... Whoa, once again, I got to get used to being on the right Windows, don't I? So we're going to go to etc and init.d. And then what I end up doing is I created that script called CS, what is right here. I originally was doing Calibre server. I just got sick of writing Calibre server, so I just did CS. And so I do nano CS. Now, you'll notice that their basic script here, you'll see all this begin initialization info here that is not in their script. If you do not have this information up here, then it was throwing another error and it would not work. And I found that error running through the system logs, trying to figure out why after a reboot was my system not loading. Well, the thing is that you had to, I had to run it over here. Basically what I did is I noticed the default start will tell the thing where to actually load the script because there will be a series of scripts that run in order. I had to put this on S, and the reason I put this on S is I want this to run, in fact this kind of has to run after OpenMediaVault starts. Was it OpenMediaVault? You know, I was trying to get this to run after the fstep file starts because I was trying to run everything on a mounted file, but it would seem that no matter what would happen, it would not work right. What it was trying to do is it was, as the Calibre server was starting, for whatever reason, it kept on starting and would give me a blank library there, and then it would mount the drive even when this was running afterwards. But I went ahead and put this as late in the system as I did, so that's why I did the default start as S rather than the 1 through 6. Then I just used this information here, and let's see. So you can see what I happen to do. On start, it simply does Calibre server with the library. Here's the library and daemonize. And this is just going to make sure that the thing runs without hanging the terminal. And so on stop, and then, you know, of course, I echo some things starting and stopping, whatever. So that's what my script looks like. And then once you run your script, you have to run your chmod. So I happen to do, since I'm already in the directory, I just did chmod. Let's see if I could do it at least once, meaning to type in the terminal. Meaning to type in the terminal the right time. Just do the chmod 755 CS. That's all I needed to do here to make this an executable. And then you want to run your, basically run your update, and then just do your update-rc.d. CS is my script name, and then defaults. And then what this is actually going to do is this is going to run a startup script. So if I back up here, you'll see my, down here in the third column, you'll see the R's, RCDs, RC0, whatever, all the way up. I thought there should have been one more there. Am I? Yep. So you'll see RCSD up at the very top, RCS.D. So you'll see here that S13, second column, or the third column, excuse me, near the bottom, you'll see S13CS. This is actually my bash script, and you'll see that's running after OpenMediaVault. It is even running after fstab, which runs mount all, is where fstab runs. But regardless, even though it's mounting after fstab, I could not get this thing to work if I was using a media server from my network drives. I could not get that to work. All right, so that's how I got my initialization script to run. That runs great. Everything is good. So now I turn the server off, turn everything back on. It automatically boots with the server. The library is correct. The next task I had to tackle was making the cron job work. Now, the biggest problem I had with the cron job is xauth was not installed. So get that installed on OpenMediaVault and you should be just fine. But pretty much from here, I think... See, look at that. Look at how easy my system was and what they're trying to do. It's just insane. All right, so with the cron job, what you want to do here is... did it again. I'm just so used to the times coming in here and just doing stuff. So you'll see that my cron job is very much like their cron job. In fact, I pretty much just copied it almost exactly. I did change the order of some things around. You'll see that they have the -R. I left that out, and the reason I went with this is I was just working with getting this command here to work in the terminal. Once that was working, I simply copied that, pasted that into the cron, and that worked out fine. So basically what we're doing is we are running the, starting the virtual server, running the Calibre database, and then with my particular library, and then what I'm doing here is I'm adding anything in that to add system, and then I'm removing everything in there. So if I expand this guy over, you'll see the whole thing. You'll see that once we add everything that's in the to add, the second thing we're going to do is we are going to delete. We're deleting everything that happens to be in that directory. Okay, so that is how my cron job is working. Now the last component here is there is an fstab over here. And what that one is that I have a system mount that mounts my Calibre folder from my network drive to this particular folder, so that all I need to do to add new books to the library is simply add them on the NAS drive itself. Every 10 minutes, the server will run the cron job. It's going to add all the books into the library, and then it's going to delete everything that I dropped into that folder. And that is, in a nutshell, how I got my entire system working. End result, now every ebook that comes into my house gets simply dropped into my folder. That gets added to my server, and then I am free to any device, any computer attached to my network can go on and access my ebook library. So hopefully that was helpful for you. If there are any other questions, feel free to address them. If there's better ways, cool, let us know. But I just wanted to get in here and show you what worked for me. That is my solution. It may not be your solution, but hey, welcome to the wonderful world of Linux. Thanks for watching, everybody. And once again, if you do like what we are doing here, feel free to check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/TomM. And also there will be an Amazon link down below. Thanks for watching, and I hope that you enjoy reading some DRM-free ebooks from your very own digital server on Linux.